You're going to run across a ton of scenarios over time where when you're designing something, you need something to repeat in a predictable fashion, either in one or multiple directions, or perhaps in a circular fashion around a center point. There's a few different ways you can achieve this in the software, one of them being a circular and linear feature pattern, and these work on things like extrusions and fillets and chamfers. But the other way is to do it right from within a sketch that a feature is going to consume. So let's take a quick look at how you might make a sketch-based pattern. As the name probably implies, sketch-based patterns happen in sketch mode. So let's go ahead and get into sketch mode by selecting a plane and activating 2D Sketch. So we see our sketching toolbar comes up, and now we can just kind of create a figure. In this case, why don't we do a rectangle? And we can select this rectangle either before or after and click on linear pattern. We see that our pre-selection happens here, but if it didn't, you could certainly just select them like this. We see a few options in this dialog. The first path is going to be any figure. We can pick a figure that is part of the thing we're patterning. We can pick, if we were to draw a reference line, we could pick a reference line as the pattern. We can pick a axis, and oftentimes this is what you will do, especially when you don't have much other geometry. You can pick an axis directly. Let me increase the spacing just a little bit. After that, it's pretty simple. You're just going to type in the number of instances you want and how far away the direction of each one should be. And you can change the direction with this checkbox. You can also go in two paths at once. So you can do something like this just by selecting another one. And we'll press OK. And there's our sketch pattern. You can also do the same thing for circular patterns. So in this case, why don't we do a circle? This would be probably one of the most common circular patterns that you're going to do. And maybe a circular pattern of holes, for example. We'll go up to the circular pattern tool, and we'll select our object. Now we need to select the center point. So click the center point here, and you can select any node that's on the workspace. The origin will probably be a pretty popular node for selection, but if you have another center point of something else that you'd like to populate that with, you can do that. And now we have to figure out the type of circular pattern that we want, and then the resulting angle of that. So in the first case, let me set the angle to maybe 25 so you can see what's going on here. The first case is we're starting at the start point, and then we're just going around a certain number of times at a certain angle. So if I were to increase the angle, we can kind of see what's happening. And if I were to increase the instances, we can kind of see what's happening. What you'll probably end up using a lot more than this, maybe 5, is going to be this guy. This says just divide the circle by however many instances we have automatically. And so we don't have to manually set the angle for that. So almost always you're probably going to use this one. Once you have that done, press OK. And our circular pattern is created. Now we could use this, for example, for a feature if we wanted to extrude this. We could do that. Let's talk about some do's and don'ts for sketch patterns before we end this lesson. Sketch patterns are the least efficient, most memory intensive way of creating a pattern. So if you're going in and you're creating a sketch pattern of 200 by 300 instances, you're going to have a problem, or you're eventually going to run into one. And the better thing to do in those cases is to reserve what you're doing for a feature pattern. So a feature pattern, instead of patterning a sketch, you'd only make one of these circles and create an extrusion. Why don't we go ahead and try that? So we have this feature now, which is an extrusion, and we can go in and create a circular feature pattern by selecting the extrusion, and we have a lot of the same options that we like, and we can pattern it as many times as we want. Feature patterns are going to be a lot more efficient, and the advantage of using a feature pattern here is that let's say I needed to change the diameter of this circle. Well, in the first case, right, I'd have to go in and change a whole lot of diameters, or perhaps they'd all have equal constraints, and then that would take a long time to do anything because the constraint solver's trying to figure that out. In this case, though, right, I only have one thing to mess with. So I go in and I just change the diameter. I press go, and then when the feature pattern recalculates, everything's just that easy. So editing is easier, maintenance is easier, making changes down the road, or performing what if scenarios all becomes easier the further away you get from a sketch and start doing things on features. That being said, there are some cases where sketch patterns are the right thing to do, and you'll learn this just by trial and error a little bit.